In this STOic TTX Facilitator training video, we're going to introduce you to the participant engagement skill. And there are a variety of things that you can do as a facilitator to enhance participant engagement in the exercise. As I said in the intro, that the participant engagement skill is the type of skill that you would have no matter what type of group facilitation you might be doing. So group discussion facilitation, these are the types of skills that you would need for this skill set. And it's the same for a tabletop exercise as it is for any group discussion. So you can look online for lots of different courses just on facilitating group discussions. I want to cover some of these skills and some of these topics as they apply specifically to a tabletop exercise. But you're going to get a lot of information. If you're interested and you really want to develop this skill, there is a completely separate skill line and different courses and different materials you can find online in order to cover this off. But I want to cover where I think as a tabletop exercise facilitator, you want to be able to improve. First off, I want to cover the 2 golden rules for facilitators, and this has to do with engagement. Rule number 1 is the exercise is theirs, not yours. This is really, really crucial. You're the facilitator, you don't own the exercise. You may have built the scenario, you may have prepared, you may have put in all the work to make the scenario as interesting and as relevant as possible and as close to a real cyber attack as possible. Yep, and that's great. I'm so glad you've done all this work and you feel very confident about this. In the end, the exercise is theirs, not yours. STOic TTX is a participant-focused framework. They decide what is relevant and where the discussions need to go. You as a facilitator are there to guide those discussions and to pull out from the participants those things that the participants need to deal with. You are not there to show off how great you are at cybersecurity or how skilled and experienced you are in incident response or cybersecurity attacks. That's not your job. Those skills might be very useful to help the participants dig through their own understanding of an incident, but that you are not the star of the show. Another way to put this is make sure when you are facilitating that they are the heroes, not you. So, as a facilitator, you need to gauge whether or not the exercise went well by the participant's response, not your own. You may have your own feeling about how well you did and how well you executed the exercise and used the various skills to move things along, but ultimately, you don't know whether or not you had a good tabletop exercise until you know what the participants thought. And it's that mindset which will make you a good facilitator. You are there for them. They are basically talking to themselves. You are providing valuable feedback and prompting great questions. The second golden rule is you are not the threat. It is very tempting because you are building the scenario and you have all the tools in place and you have all this time to prepare and you might even know the organization where the weak spots are. That's great. You are not the threat in the scenario. You are not in this to win. You do not win. One of the things I like to compare a tabletop exercise to is a video game or a role-playing game where you as a facilitator, you are a non-player character. You're an NPC. You are not the big bad guy. You are not in opposition to the players or the participants. You are merely a non-player character giving out quests. That's it. That's your role. And that role is so very, very important because it guides and it focuses the participants and what they need to do next. And as we'll see in a later video on that experience, you can craft that experience for them. But you are not the threat. You are not here to win. You do not win this scenario. You are there to help them work this through. This is really important. And I've seen facilitators fall into this trap that, oh, I'm going to get them. I'm really going to trip them up this time. Or they don't feel like they have done a good tabletop exercise until the participants have failed at something. This is the wrong mindset, and it sets you in opposition to the participants. This is not going to work out very well, and this isn't a sustainable relationship to have with the participants long term. You need to work with them and be part of that team in order to get them to progress. So once we've got these golden rules in place, that you are not the threat and the exercise is for them, it's theirs, not yours, now we're in the right mindset to be looking at participant engagement. Now, engagement is whether or not, and to what extent, the participants are participating. Do you have people that are saying enough? Are they contributing enough? Are they letting their imaginations go off in the right and useful directions and relevant directions in order to bring useful discussion to the table? You as a facilitator have incredible power to do that and to empower them to ask themselves the right questions and to have their imaginations explore the right things. Now, there are 3 types of questions that you can ask at the table in order to maintain engagement. You've got confirmation questions. Some people will call this or might know this as active listening. You have curiosity questions, and you have consequence questions. And we will go through each of these in a separate video because they each require a little bit of treatment and a little bit of exploration on their own to help understand, especially if you've never facilitated a group discussion before. But in very brief, a confirming question or an active listening question is simply to repeat back what the participant has just said. So they say that they're going to check the seam for alerts, right? Sometimes having the facilitator repeat that back to them. Okay, so you are checking the seam for alerts. All right. Having someone else repeat back their own words can give people a different perspective, and that can be really, really useful. It also means that you have understood what they've said, and you might not have understood. And if you're recording what they are saying and the elements of what they're saying, you want to make sure you understand it so it's relevant. So confirming questions are one of these core questions that you want to be able to ask. The other question that you want to ask are curiosity questions. You want to dig into their responses and take their response and explore the edges of it or explore the next steps of it. And you want to make these as open-ended as possible, and you want to let your own imagination flow a little bit. So, for instance, you want to check the seam for alerts. How do you do that? And at what point would you do this in the process? Right. So you got these curiosity questions. Some, as we'll get into in the video on that, the who, what, when, where, and why type of questions are really useful for this. And that helps to dig into their responses and look for opportunities to look for gaps. The last type of question you want to be able to ask is a consequence question. So people have made a series of steps, they've taken an action, that's going to have an effect. And that's going to have an effect not just on the incident, on containing the incident or responding to the incident, but it's going to have side effects as well. And being able to keep track of these actions a little bit and then asking about some of these consequence questions. So you're checking the seam for the alerts. And so while you're doing that, what else is happening? Right. So the cost of someone spending their time searching through the seam for alerts means that person isn't doing something else. For instance, it's a type of consequence. The consequence questions video will get into those different types and how you can explore those. Even if you're not a cybersecurity expert, if you are an expert in cybersecurity or incident response, you will have from experience an understanding of some of the consequences that you may have yourself experienced. And that's a great experience to bring to the table. But one of the things we'll do in that video is explain how that can work. And then the last thing you want to do in terms of engagement is prompts to keep the momentum going. And we have a video just on that so that you can rehearse and gain those skills on how to make sure that the conversation just doesn't die an awkward death in the middle of an exercise, and how to keep it constantly lively and how to get everyone involved. So I encourage you to look at the other videos on the confirmation questions, the curiosity questions, the consequence questions and the maintaining momentum videos so that you get a better sense of how these work, and tips and tricks and shortcuts that you can take to make sure you can use this easily in the middle of an exercise.